All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. If you've been following us for a while now, Asia and I would just like to say thank you very much for listening. We really appreciate it. We appreciate the people who engage and ask questions or send messages to the guests that we have on, or Asia and myself. So just wanted to say thank you with that real quick. Um, we're going through summertime here. We're up in Vancouver, so we just had Canada Day, which is our national holiday. So everybody was sort of off of work the last couple of days and probably spending some time with their family or their families. We actually went and did some fun stuff with our kids and their friends. And Asia and I went out for dinner last night, which was actually Canada Day. So we've been having some fun. Our friends to the south got their day coming up. Actually, by the time this gets released, they'll have gone through it. So I hope that you've had some time off of work and got to relax, maybe go on a little vacation, spend some time with your family. So if I'm sure if you have kids, you're getting out of school now, and things might be getting a little more busy for you. So the sun is shining though where we are, so it's all good. We have a new guest this week. It's a topic that Asia and I really enjoy talking about, which is the business world. And our guest today is focused sort of in the consulting area of the business world with executive coaching, talking about leadership, communication skills, feedback, all these sorts of topics. So Asia and I are very passionate about that. So we're really excited today. So welcome, Ron. Thanks for coming on the show, and I hope you're doing well.
Folks, thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. I am glad to be here. And yeah, I always welcome the chance to talk about kind of what we were discussing even before the show, just about anything, because anything leads everywhere and everywhere leads to anything.
Yeah, I think too, like you can talk to somebody about one dynamic of what they do, but you don't really get to understand somebody until you have an in-depth conversation about numerous things to get an idea of the things that they're passionate about outside of maybe leadership, executive coaching. I'm sure you have many more passions in life than just those things. So I think to get a good understanding of where someone's coming from and their perspective and you really have to have sort of a rounded conversations about a number of things in order to really understand them. So I do think that that's important. It's one of the reasons why on our show we like to, as I was saying to you, we like to have sort of just a natural conversation where a bunch of things could come up and talk about bunch of different areas of life or interests that people have. So I think that's really important, as you said there. So, Ron, you're out in New Jersey, and I think it was about 25 years ago, you started your own business in the consulting world, RLB Training and Development. So, why don't we start
Yeah.
just, if you could give us sort of a high level overview of what it is that you guys do with your company, and maybe share a little bit about where the idea came from to start your own company and why you may have been passionate about that at the beginning.
RLB training and development it's just me. I am all by my little self. And it's funny because I got into training and development 32 years ago and realized very, very quickly, wow, this is my calling. This is fun. This is something about which I'm incredibly passionate. And one thing led to the next. I was in sales training to begin, and again, I was reading about this yesterday. My two people with whom I worked, my boss and my boss's boss, must have seen something in me that I didn't see. They said, "Would you be interested in getting into more leadership development and things along those lines?" One thing led to the next, and I made a number of stops along the way. I was working for a pharmaceutical company. March 2003 will be forever burned into my memory because I walked into work, we were reorganizing, and the senior leaders had told everybody there are going to be layoffs for the first time in the history of this company. And again, very long story short, I got laid off that day. came home, I was talking to my wife, and I was like, "You know what? I'm tired of this. I'm tired of the politics. I'm tired of the I don't want to say the pressure because that's not what I mean. Just the politics and just everything that goes along with that. A couple of people had mentioned to me over the years, you have so many different certifications and you have such a broad background. You should go into business for yourself. And I was like, maybe there's a little something to that. And from that sprung the idea of RLB training and development. And one thing leading to the next, people have always said to me, "Where does the RLB come from?" And that's Ron, Lori, and Boo, who was our dog at the time. And and again, just fun stuff. Except tying everything together because it's not about just work for me. It's about everything, and everything ties together. And I started the business about 21, 22 years ago, whatever it is. I don't pay careful attention to that anymore. It's been a long time. And it's been so much fun because you were talking about passions, Aaron, and one of the biggest passions I have, just overall overarching in my entire life, is to make a difference. And I love that. I just absolutely love the fact that I have made a difference in people's lives. And I know that because people have told me, people have stayed in touch with me, and that is so significant for me because again, it's just a big part of who I am.
Mhm. Yeah, you get the fulfillment aspect of it, which obviously is very important for anyone to keep doing what it is they're doing. So,
Yeah.
so when you started it, um, what sorts of uh, services did you guys offer to people?
It was, focusing around essentially leadership, management development. There was some coaching involved, not a whole lot in the beginning, and that has evolved since then. And what's been really fun and, just really fulfilling for me, over the past maybe 2.5 years, I have gotten very interested in culture development for organizations. And that's been a lot of fun. That's been a focus. And yeah, it's something that, again, makes a difference for everybody.
Yeah, so Asia has her own business, and so a lot of these things you're going to talk to about today are very applicable to her. Uh, they're applicable to me in a different way because I used to coach a university golf team locally here.
Okay.
So the culture piece is really it's a really hard problem to solve well, and I mean in the context that I'm talking about, I'm dealing with 18 to 22, 23-year olds, which is a different problem than say 30-year olds to 60-year olds in an office or whatever it is a business might be doing. um, but yeah, no, I spent a lot of time thinking about the dynamics between people and what sort of ideology you need to have amongst a group in order to perform well, and what can I do in order to cultivate that, and do we need to change things or working what's not working for a culture. So
Yeah. Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
like I said, that can apply to a number of different, I mean, it can apply to a family, a culture of a family. So you guys started off early there, and leadership was one of your main services that you offered. So where did you sort of learn about leadership and how it works, and what are the important aspects and dynamics of it? Where did that come from for you?
The earliest exposure to leadership development that I got was at Toshiba many years ago. And we used to have something called, there was a 6-day course called Sales Management Plus. And essentially, we at Toshiba, in the division in which I worked, we did not have a direct sales force. We had dealers who sold our equipment. So they were our primary quote unquote customers. We would have the dealer owner and his or her second in command come to essentially just a 6-day retreat to help them learn more about exactly what we're talking about now, the culture of their dealership, learning about feedback, learning about listening, learning about priorities, emotional intelligence, and all of these different things. And as I got exposure to it, I realized, like, you know what? This is fun. This is interesting to me. And one thing led to the next, and I've been so fortunate and so blessed to just be developing and developing since then. And I mean, of course, I'll fill in any blanks that I can for you here.
I have a quick point before you ask your question, Asia. I love reading Ron, and as far as I know, Toshiba, is that a Japanese company?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're a very interesting culture because they care tremendously about like social dynamics, and like many times you hear about Japanese companies, and it's like if you're going to learn about corporate culture, that seems to be the place to go because they just as the way they are culturally within their society lends itself so well
Yes.
to actually working collectively in a business, and the values that the culture they have there holds goes straight into it's not just primarily about making every cent you can. There's other things that matter. So that's interesting. And like I said, I've heard this about a number of companies in Japan.
Yes. Yeah, very, very true. And Aaron, at some point during the show, we're going to have to circle back. One of the things I noticed as soon as we came on the air was your bookcase, because I'm a voracious reader as well. So we'll have to get into that later. And Asia, I don't want to ignore you because I knew you were ready to ask something.
It's okay. I've been quiet this whole time. I've just been listening, soaking it all in. But kind of like what Aaron said, I'm more curious too, just about the leadership side of things, and in particular, the feedback, and what you kind of coach in terms of that. Because I think as somebody who's in a leadership position, whether you run a small company or you're a CEO of a massive company, I think like performance is always something that you're looking at and you're wanting to improve and you're wanting, but that doesn't always just stem down to the actual numbers, right? There's so many other characteristics of performance, in my opinion, of the way people show up, their attitude. Like there's so many other drivers. And so I think the topic of feedback, criticism, constructive criticism, whatever it is that you want to talk about, I think people oftentimes really shy away from that. And this isn't even just business, this could be friendships, this could be family, this could be
Absolutely.
so many different things. And so I'm curious what you kind of see in the realm of business, or from what you experience around people and the feedback topic, and how you find people are inherently around that, and how you kind of coach people to be able to provide feedback to improve performance within their teams, um, and also just to create, a culture that is conducive to being open-minded and learning, and all of that. I know that's kind of a loaded question, but I think, and with so many different facets, but I think that that's something that a lot of people are afraid to approach, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, goodness, there's a lot to unpack in that. There's
Yeah.
a lot, and I think the main piece, at least from what I was gathering, is about feedback. And relative to feedback, number one, before we even get into that, one of the most important aspects for leadership, for people to be effective, again, in any sort of dynamic, whether it is organizationally, departmentally, personally, family related, whatever it is, what are your relationships like? Because relationships are key,
Mhm.
absolutely key. And the research around this is very, very clear. The better you know the people, and I'm going to focus on work now, the better you know the people with whom you work, both personally and professionally, from those perspectives, the more effectively you will work with them. And so it's critical to build these relationships. Now, a lot of times people, my experience has been, oh, you're talking about, relationships. You need to be nice to people. And what are your hobbies? What do you like to do? And again, I'm not disparaging that. Goodness, that's very important to learn. A good work relationship too is along the lines of, what are your passions? What do you love to do? What are your career goals? What do you want to do? What drives you crazy here at this company? All of these different things, that's all a part of a good work relationship. Now we focus on the feedback itself. And again, for me, I am so fortunate to have learned this a long time ago. And over the years, I've never seen anything contrary to it. Good feedback, very simply, is a non judgmental conversation about behavior, about work, or about an idea. Key piece to that, non judgmental. How do you deliver non-judgmental feedback? It's not hard. It's not hard at all. The focus is on, what did your colleague say? What did your colleague do? That's non-judgmental. The way I like to put it too, very simply, you never want to label somebody. You never want to label someone. Just for argument's sake, if I can, Aja, okay? You give me a report that has typos in it, okay? You're sloppy. You're sloppy, Aja. I can't count on you. There's the label right there. I mean, if you said that to me, I'd be like, yeah, okay, thanks a lot for the feedback. No, 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 no. I'm concerned because let's look at the typos, what you did in the report. Let's talk about that. And again, non-judgmentally is the key here. It's all about, what did they say? What did they do? I'll give you an example. I was in Boston a number of years ago doing a class with 12 people, 3-day class. Day one, everything went fine. We had no issues. On the morning of day two, there was a guy named Andy who, on 3 different occasions that morning, he cursed when he answered a question. None of the 3 words, in my opinion, were so awful that it required a public setting of expectations. Still, in all, it did happen 3 times. Lunchtime rolls around. It's like, okay, guys, could you please be back at 1:30, whatever it was. He was the last person to leave the room, and I was really grateful for that. Andy, can I talk to you for a minute, please? This morning, I heard you curse on 3 separate occasions. These are the 3 words, Andy, I heard you use, A, B, and C. I've got to tell you, that can be offensive to people. It can turn people off. I'm going to ask, can I count on you to stop cursing, please? And he looked at me, he goes, yeah, I will. What did he say? The 3 curse words. That was what I needed him to stop doing. There was no judgment, nothing. And an old boss of mine said one time, and I always remember this: nobody can deny they did or said something. Can't. They can't refute it. I guess you can deny it. Still, point being simply, I heard you say it. I saw you do it. And again, non-judgmentally, where it's like, you're immature, you're immature and unprofessional, Andy. I'm not gonna call him that. That's not fair. Then I'm being the jerk. Let's
Uh-huh.
talk about the behavior. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think too, when you remove the judgment, you're not accusing, you're not making somebody, it's
Exactly.
not an accusatory thing. It's just, hey, this is what's going on. And one of the things that I always talk to people about, I coach like quite a few people as well. And I think people are always afraid of the confrontation. They're always afraid it's going to turn into a confrontation. And I am very much a believer that you are fully in control of that. Like you and your approach and the way you talk about things and what you choose to use, the stage you set, all of that impacts whether this is turning confrontational or it's just a conversation. And I think if you go in, and so many people are, I'm so afraid of confrontation, so afraid of confrontation. I try and coach people all the time. I'm like, it's because you think it's going to be confrontation. Like so
Yes.
much of it is just
Yes.
how you choose to handle it, approach it, and deal with it. And so I always am like, that is, up to the both of you. If you want it to be confrontational, like someone has to be in control of that,
Yeah.
a little bit. So yeah,
Yes.
no, I
No,
think
it's
that's a good points though. It's just like losing the judgment, saying this is what I've noticed or this is what I've seen with my own two eyes or the actions or whatever, and just bringing those things up and addressing that in particular, and not making that person feel as though they are now some type of way because of that.
yes. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
That's
No, I think
exactly
that's
right.
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got a good segue for you here, Ron. When
Perfect.
I started when I started reading, this was probably I was living in Vegas. I was going to school there, doing a master's degree, and the guy that I live with, who's somebody that I care a lot about still. He was very much a mentor for me, and still is in lots of ways. He had a bookshelf, and I remember just browsing through it one day. I used to live with him, so he was my master's advisor. He was the person overseeing my thesis, and I lived with him, which was a very unique experience.
Yes.
Bet.
And
He doesn't do that with students.
he actually does some of this corporate consulting himself. And so he's got all kinds of books on business and leadership. And one of the books that I yanked off the shelf early on was it was called Thanks for the Feedback. And I
I've
remember
read it.
reading it. I remember reading it and going like, well, this is weird. Like this book is like $30 and I could spend, 10 hours or whatever, however fast or slow you read a book, and I can learn like all of this stuff for $30. Like this doesn't make sense. Like how would I not learn about this earlier, Like, and so I read that book, which is really what set me off on reading, where I was like, why wouldn't I spend the $30 or whatever it is to if I could pick some person, very successful person's brain, I would pay way more than $30 for that. So if they've written it down in a book, I'm there. Like,
Right.
so I've one of the books that I read pretty early on. I've read it probably like four times, and it kind of it's probably the one book where I was like, wow, this is so valuable to me as a person and my life was the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, which I
I
saw
thought you were either gonna say that
that you
or, how to win friends and influence people. I thought it was either gonna be one of those 2.
yeah,
I
those are
can I
both.
can I do before you go any further,
Go ahead,
can I show you something that's on my desk?
you bet.
With all the
I
sticky
am
notes.
certified to teach the 7 habits of
Yeah,
highly effective people.
I
And
saw that.
it's a passion of mine.
that's so
It's
funny.
it's a phenomenal book, and I always recommend it to people. Like I said, I used to read it once a summer. So we were in 2017. Asia and I got married, and I think it was about the second or third time I was reading the book that summer. And I underline stuff, and I go back and I reread, and we were going on our honeymoon to Thailand, and I actually brought the book because I was like, I read this in August. That's what I do. I read that book. So I read it for probably 3 or 4 summers in a row, but I took it with us to Thailand and I read it. But it's it's a it's a phenomenal book to give somebody a conceptual idea of how it is you can do what you do just better. Like you can do it better than you're doing now, and it gives you an idea as to how to do that, because I think a lot of people, they just don't know what to do. Like they don't know how to better themselves. It's not usually until somebody who comes along and is like, hey, and has been inspiring to them and shares some information with them and tries to mentor them a little bit. I would say that's probably typically how it would happen. But for me, I used to play golf all the time, so I kind of had this mindset a little bit just through competitive golf. But when I read that book, it sort of shifted from, "Hey, you can get better as a golfer," to, "Hey, you can get better as a person," like a human
Person.
being. So
That's right.
I saw that you had that book. So since you're certified in that book, what do you think are the key pieces for people, like just to listen to and maybe inspire them to want to read that book?
I People ask me all the time, if you could if give me one tip give me one tip that could make me better at anything I do, or just make me a better person, whatever you want to call it, okay? The one tip I would give that I do give people, get to know yourself extraordinarily well. Get to know yourself on a really, really deep level. And I think the 7 habits helps people to do that. Habit one essentially being everything is a choice. Everything in my life, I'll speak for myself, every single thing in my life is a choice. It was my choice to join the show today. Did I have to jump on and accept when you sent the link, Aja? Nope. Absolutely not. That's my choice. Everything is a choice. And number two, habit two, begin with the end in mind, writing that personal mission statement and learning about, hey, wait a minute. Who am I? What am I? And that's what habit two does, to talk about, hey, who are the people that have influenced you over their life? What are the key traits they've had? What are some of your key relationships? What are you all about? What do you want to accomplish? And then habit three, put first things first, is all about using your time most effectively so that I know who I am now. Habit one. Okay, fine. I'm sorry. No. Habit one, everything is a choice. Habit two, I know who I am now. Habit three, how am I going to choose to spend my time so that I can be a well rounded individual, both personally and professionally? And then the second set of habits, 4 through 6, are all about working together. 1 through 3, get to know yourself. That's you become independent. And then once we become independent, 4 through 6, think win-win, the attitude of abundance. There's plenty out there for everybody. Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Let me learn how to listen. I want to listen to you first so I can understand you first. Then I'll respond. And then habit 6, synergizing. How can we come up with a bunch of different ideas here to solve any problem that we're facing? Habit 7, the habit of renewal. Got to take good care of myself because I'm no good to anybody if I don't. Fabulous book. Absolutely.
It's fantastic, and I remember, um, I think the biggest impact that book had on me was the second habit, begin with the end in mind, because they tell the little story or whatever it is about, going to your funeral. If you were to imagine
Yes.
yourself,
Yes.
sitting at your own funeral and you were listening to these people come up and speak about you, what would you want them to say? Like, would you want them to say, Aaron was a hermit crab and he sat in his house all day and really didn't participate in anyone else's life? And well, of course you wouldn't want that. You'd want people to come up there and say, Aaron was a fantastic person. He, maybe was well spoken and treated people with dignity and respect and always tried to lend a hand. He was always there for people who needed help. Maybe he, donated money to people who needed it or what. And it got me thinking, like, what I want, like, what would I actually want people to say? And then from there, what it did, it was like, okay, if that is, hopefully it's 70 years from now, I have 70 years to try and implement that.
That's
So
right.
so what is it that I would like people to say? Or another way to put it is, who do I want to be when I actually leave this place? And in that time frame, what do I actually need to do to become that person? And it
That's
really
right.
shifted, like I said, it really changed the way that I thought about myself and what it is that I want to become over that time.
Mhm.
I'm somebody who thinks very far down the road to begin with. I value time in the future, and um, so for me, it wasn't like a hard stretch to get my mind to go down the road to a funeral, because I think sort of generally that way anyways. Like, I'm constantly thinking about what is it I want in the future, or who do I want to become, and I just remember that section of the book for sure had the largest impact on me, where I thought about it that way, and I was like, whoa. So I, I I tell everybody who asks me, if I were to read one book, what would I read? And I always tell them, you should read this book, Stephen Covey, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And there's no way it doesn't change your life in some way. There's zero chance, you know? So phenomenal.
I think too,
Phenomenal.
even Ron, with your advice of like getting to know yourself, the concept is so simple, but I don't think it's actually that easy because I think growing up, like, we've been conditioned that, like, you should be this way and you should follow this path and you should do that, and I see so many people, who end up with these lives that they feel like they had no say in and no creation in, and they get there and they're like, "But everyone told me this is where I was supposed to be or how I was supposed to do things," and so I think, like, it's so much deeper than just what do you do? Who are you? Like, it's getting to know yourself. Like, what are you actually passionate? I think so many people end up in careers, lifestyles that they are like, how did I get to this place? And because I think part of that is they've never had a full understanding of who they really are at the core and like their passions, their purpose. What are they here for? Like, what do they desire most out of life? So much of that just comes from what we've been told or what we see around us, and, like, I think that really, like, diving deep into that isn't as easy as a lot of as
No.
just, like, just get to know yourself. Like, it's really
Yeah, get
not
to know
that simple.
yourself.
Yeah, it's not that
So
simple. So,
yeah.
how would you like what would you say are the first steps for someone? I mean, obviously, reading this book is really helpful. It will help guide you through
Mhm.
different prompts and different ways probably to think about things, but if someone's like, "I don't really know who I am," like, what would be your first, like, your first 1 or 2 steps to, like, figuring that out for themselves?
I am a big believer, both personally and professionally, in assessments. And personality assessments is one of the things I believe in. I am a big believer.
I'm not laughing at you, I'm just,
I
like,
figured.
I'm speaking to an older version of my husband.
Yeah. The disc instrument is my most favorite. That's what
The
I
disc?
like to use. Yeah.
Okay.
And for me, it is so accurate. It is so useful for people to learn about, hey, wait a minute, am I more task oriented? Am I more people oriented? And there's no right or wrong, good or bad with this. Am I faster or slower? And once you get to start to learn about yourself, the strengths and the limitations within each one of the particular styles, that's a great start. I will do some self-embedded marketing, and I don't mean to come across this way. For me, though,
Please
what
do.
I like to do, I have a file, which I think there's like 15 or 16 it's just thought-provoking questions that I have people fill out. And again, it takes hours to do this. This is no
Huh.
kidding around stuff where it's like, here, I'll give it to you today and let's go over it tomorrow. It's like, no, take your time with this. Think these things through because it's all about who are you? What are you looking for in your life? Where are you now? Where do you want to be? And all these different things. And just as an example, my wife's cousin Jen was a athletic trainer for a very large Division II college. I think they could have gone D1, whatever, it doesn't matter. Point is, she was second in command of all of their training and medical stuff and things like that. She had the opportunity to get promoted. She was talking to Lori about it, and Jen is out in California. She's like, I don't know. This is such an opportunity. I mean, the money is huge. I mean, and the exposure, oh my goodness. Except the commitment, the time commitment is huge. I would be traveling a lot. And, she has two boys. What about the boys? And what about Wayne, her husband? And, of course, Lori said to her, oh, Ron will talk to you about it. I was like, fine. And I was glad to do it. And I said to her, I was like, Jen, before I talk to you, I want you to answer these questions. And so she did. We got on the phone, and I'll never forget. She was just like, "Oh my, oh my, you just had me thinking about this so deeply that what is important to me." And, and again, that's the key stuff. And Aja, it's exactly like you said, at least for me. This is serious stuff, and this is not boom, oh gee, now I know myself. No.
It's a never-ending thing as well, like, it doesn't.
That's exactly right.
So I've used the one Ray Dalio. I'm sure you know Ray. Ray Dalio's come up with one. I think he used to use the DISC one, personality assessments, but he's come up with his own one. You can just go on the line online and go to I think it's like principles or something.com, and he's got a whole app, and I do it. I do the same thing. I do probably once a year. I'll retake the thing. I'll read through the results. Maybe I'll go to ones that I've done in the past and see how it's changed a little bit based on how I've answered the questions. But huge, it is like you're saying. It's not. This is not like a Saturday morning with a coffee for 30 minutes. This is like this takes you like a long time just to think about like how do I even answer this question? Like what matters to me here? And then it spits you something else at the end. And like you said with your sister-in-law, you're like, whoa, what am I doing here? Like, how this isn't the decision I'm about to, or I potentially could have made there is not aligned with anything that just came out from this assessment of my personality. And then I think it's interesting that you go, how did I possibly make that decision then? Which goes back to what Asia was just saying about people end up in careers where they just, you know, pass through and pass through and pass through. And if you sit there and think, what is my goal here 70 years from now? Beginning with the end in mind, you can start to see, how you can make decisions based on what actually matters to you and end up in a life that you care about. You might make less money, or you might have less of this or that or whatever, or you might have more. Who knows? But lots of people make decisions, especially in careers, based on what they've sort of been told, or I'm going to make an extra $5,000 a year, you know, and
Yeah.
and you do that for
Well,
30 years, and you probably don't end up where you would have liked to, like in your dreams of an ideal career. Or so it's all very linked together, and understanding yourself, and then designing sort of the life that you want based on who you are.
yes. Everything is linked together. There's just no getting around it. And one of the key things for me, and I always say to people, is that this is for you. And and again, very often I say it often, often, often to my clients, to any classes that I'm doing. I speak for myself. I will not sit there. You should do this. You shouldn't be so focused on your career. Now, do whatever you want. That's again. Go back to habit one from Covey. Everything's a choice. Everything's a choice, except every choice has consequences. And you need to understand that.
And I think that's where people go wrong, is that they might see something shiny in the one choice, and that's all they really factor in. And then they get into that choice and they're like, well, I didn't think this was going to cost me spending time with my kids, like an extra
Right.
10 hours a
Eh,
week, or I didn't think this was going to
exactly.
strain
Exactly.
my relationships that I have around, or like, I just
That's
thought
right.
I was going to get paid a little bit more and, you know,
Yeah.
be at a more
Nothing
prestigious
would change.
business, or like, and that's really the key, I think, to it all, is that you can make what I agree. You can decide whatever it is that you want to do. Like you can decide make any decision, but you have to understand and compare. If you have two decisions, you have to understand on each side what are the pros and the cons of each one, and then you got to compare them to the other side. And it can get very complicated and overwhelming if you got four different choices going on and you're trying to pro and con list, four different choices and compare which one's the best. But I think the easiest part of it all, Ron, is that you can very quickly get rid of choices. You start
That's
to
right.
list some cons that, okay, I just can't tolerate that one. 10 hours extra a week away from my kids who are 6 and 8, like that one's
Yeah,
a no-go for me, gone out the window.
that's right.
So you can limit.
That's exactly right.
Because
And I
you
mean, we came back from 2 weeks in Italy, over Memorial Day weekend. We had a, really, really good time, a lot of fun and just everything else. And I guess about 2 weeks 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, it doesn't matter. Recently, my wife got an email, ironically, from Jen that I was talking about earlier, and just saying, hey, we're having a really big family reunion out in California in the middle of July. You guys are invited. And again, it comes down to, well, we just came back from a big trip to Italy. What should we do? And, Lori and I are talking about it. And I just said to her, I was like, Lori, when do you think you might see these people again?
Mhm.
Just because we just came, not just came back, still, we went on a long trip recently overseas. Fine, except how important is your family to you? When are you going to see Sally again? She's in her 80s. And what about, and again, I'm not trying to say that Lori didn't want to go. I wasn't trying to talk her into it. My point simply is this is what's important
Yeah.
to us.
Mhm.
So we're going.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the moment, when you just got off planes and you're tired and you're like,
Right.
ah,
That's exactly right.
Also, too, just trying
it's,
to you're almost trying to be, like, logical, like, "Oh, well, we just did this, like, so do we need to do this next trip?" And you're always kind of trying to rationalize one way or the other, but I think truly, yeah, when you go, "Okay, well, what are your actual values in this decision, though?" When you take out the and for obviously for some people it could be finances or whatever, and that's a little different. If you're like, we can't afford to go, then it's like, okay, that's one
Yes.
thing. But if you're like, these are my values, this is what is important to me, why am I trying to hum and haw about this decision? Like, it should be a simple decision.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, no, it's
one
so true.
one of the things that you guys talk about, Ron, or you as a solo man with consult or with clients and stuff that you have is emotional intelligence.
Mm.
Give us maybe your thoughts on what emotional intelligence is and what makes it such an important thing.
I look at emotional intelligence a little differently than a lot of people, and I'm going to tie it back into a big, big part of what we've been talking about throughout the entire show. Get to know yourself extremely well is a huge part of emotional intelligence. Who are you? What are your values? What are you all about? And and again, I do this mostly from a work perspective, although it's applicable in your personal life too. What are your strengths? What are your limitations? And you need to be able to articulate this comfortably, easily to your colleagues, to your family, to your friends, to whatever it might be. Learning about yourself, knowing full well, hey, and again, see here, I'll speak for myself. I know darn well I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. Big part of emotional intelligence. When I'm wrong, I will apologize very quickly. My fault. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. Or I made a mistake there. Here's how I will correct it. Being open minded, being empathetic. And again, going back actually to Covey's Habit 5 is a huge part, for me at least, of emotional intelligence. Seek first to understand what's going on here. What are your concerns about the show? What made you think it didn't go well, Aaron? Again, just those sorts of things. Instead of, no, that show went fine. No, 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 Aaron, there was nothing wrong with that at all. I did a great job. And it says that, well, what are your concerns? So now I understand you, and then I can frame my response instead of, and go back, Asia, to what you were talking about with the feedback. If I don't try to understand you first, it could very well turn into a confrontation.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's all of these things tie into emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I also too, one of the things that I think with emotional intelligence is, and again, I don't teach on this. This is just like my own, even just through my own experience, but also understanding your triggers, like what fires
Exactly
you
right.
up
Exactly
inside
right.
like crazy that makes that
Yes.
like rage or that frustration come out, and really knowing when certain situations will do that. And then almost slowly, like, well, learning tactics, learning your own strategies to be able to articulate yourself well when those situations come about. And I think too, the ability to be able to apologize when you didn't act the way you should have or didn't
Mhm.
say things the way you should have. I think that is a huge strength for people when they can admit that they were wrong, and I also think it builds a ton of trust. So I think when you are aware of those things and you can admit that you didn't have the answer there, or you acted incorrectly there, or whatever, I think it builds a ton of trust with people, and they begin to see like we're all human too, we're not perfect. And I think that's a really valuable skill that a lot of people are afraid to admit that mistakes happen or that they are the ones that make them. And I
Yeah,
actually think
yeah.
it's a massive strength when you can do that, to be vulnerable enough to be like, hey, I messed up there. Like, I'm really sorry that that happened, that I did that, that I contributed. Like, I think it's a massive strength, honestly, not a weakness at all.
My wife last night plugged in to charge the blind in our kitchen,
Mhm.
okay? And, and she plugged it in, let's say for argument's sake, maybe 7 o'clock last night, whatever it was, okay? So anyway, I worked out this morning, went up to the kitchen, and I looked and I was like, "Oh, it's still plugged in." So and it's high. It's not real easy to plug this thing in. So anyway, I reached up, pulled it down. She comes in the room and she was like, "Oh, you unplugged that. I just plugged it in. I had taken it out last night because I didn't want it to be on all night." Instantly. And for me, it's just second nature. "Lori, I didn't know you had done that. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I'll take care of it." Boom, done. Instead of, "Well, it wasn't my fault because I didn't know that." I was like, "Hey, I was wrong." And
Yeah.
then just boom, let's move on.
Yeah.
It's all
Mhm.
good here.
Yeah, it's an easy way to make things not very big deal, like,
Right.
and avoid potential confrontation, like, which most people don't like.
Yeah,
No.
exactly. No, add me to the list.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
No,
it's
it's true, but I
necessary.
find oh, sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say it's definitely necessary at times, but there's so many
No
times where
doubt.
it's just completely unnecessary.
Mhm.
Like, there's
No
misunderstandings,
doubt.
there's assumptions that were made, like, it's just not necessary.
Yeah. And I just find too, like the honesty that can come from conversations when you are willing to be that vulnerable person, like you get deeper to the core of what's actually going on instead of just saying, you know, well, was it my fault? Don't look at me for doing this or whatever. I had no
Right.
idea. Like
That's
that's
right.
so surface level. You don't get to the core of things. And that's obviously a small example, but in business or life, I feel like it happens all of the time where
Absolutely.
you're just unwilling to bend, or the lack of self-awareness of like, oh, I maybe actually did do that. Okay, I can own that. And it's not a like, I'm trying to get out of this, so I'll just take the blame and I'll apologize or whatever. It's not that either. It's just when you can really have that self-awareness of like, you're right, I did say those things. I did come off this way. I think it just, yeah, you actually get to the deeper root of what is going on, and you can actually solve problems from that space when there's no big walls or tension up.
That's right. And
Mhm.
it's a big part of this too is being open-minded enough to realize, okay, this is not going well. And you're reminding me. I can't talk about the circumstances in depth because it's not fuzzy. I just don't remember it all that clearly. Not long ago though, with a client in Indianapolis, we were doing culture development stuff, and we had a group of people there, and we were going to spend the day together. We had done a really good half day so far. We had gotten a lot done. We started on some management training and some management skills in the afternoon, and it was going nowhere, just nowhere. And my client, the owner and his second in command came up to me, and they were like, "We're losing them. We're losing them." And I was like, "Absolutely, we are. Let's pull the plug. Let's just pull the plug on this. We've had a good day. There's no reason to keep them here. Let's just pull the plug instead of, no, 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 it's going fine. This is my program." And just as no, you guys. And again, it go, with Covey's stuff. Habit 6 of synergizing. What are our ideas here? Let's pull the plug. Let's let them go. We'll do it another time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good, and not you're not going in with your own agenda. Like, it has to go this way in order for everything to be perfect. It's like, "No, this isn't vibing, we're not meshing right now, the energy's off. We can do this another time where it's way more effective than trying to force it down their throats," you know?
That's exactly right. That's
Yeah,
exactly right.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think are the key elements of somebody being a high quality leader, Ron? What would that person characteristic wise have? What skills do they need? What makes somebody a really good leader?
You know, there are so many different things, and for whatever reason, what's popping into my head right away, I'm gonna go back to what Aja when Aja brought up the question way back when about feedback and just talking about, hey, people don't want to have confrontations and all these other things. One of the key elements to me of being a good leader is creating a psychologically safe environment. And how does that happen? You need to include people in all kinds of different things. From a coffee clutch perspective, include people. Aaron, we're going to get coffee. You want to walk with us? We're going to lunch today. How about you guys join us? Fine. That's part of it. Equally as important though, hey, we're having a meeting. You two guys are fairly new to the organization. Even though you probably don't know the subject matter that well, please join us. Come sit with us, listen. Here you can learn about what we're all about, how we make decisions here. Fine. The second piece of psychological safety is allowing people to learn and ask all kinds of questions. Is that, I'm sorry, Aaron, I need to ask you this again. I know you showed me this yesterday. I'm still a little unclear about it. Again, whatever it might be, allowing people to really learn without feeling like I'm a dope or he's going to hate me. He's going to think I'm stupid. She's going to go upstairs with this and say the new guy's not making it. Whatever it might be, that needs to be in place. Once that's in place, the third level is contribute. Now you need to let me contribute. And what simply, I know what I'm doing now. Let me do my thing. I don't need you to oversee me. I don't need you to micromanage me. Let me contribute. And then fourth is challenge. And when I'm comfortable enough, that's when I will challenge the process. That's when and appropriately challenge. I'm not sure we should go in this direction. I'm not sure this is a good idea. Do we have the money for this right now? Again, whatever it might be, that psychologically safe environment for me is critical for a leader to create.
I listened to Jeff Bezos one time talking
Yeah.
about essentially exactly what you were just explaining. He said, the meetings that they would have at Amazon would include people of all different ranks, like all the way up from CEO level down to people who worked on like a warehouse floor. And he said a number of things. One is that it made people feel like they actually had an opinion at what went on here. But he also said everybody in the company has a different perspective of the company. And he said it makes no sense to go and ask a CFO about something within the warehouse or when they don't ever step foot in the warehouse. Like they don't, the best guy to ask how to optimize, movement of products throughout the warehouse and how we could do it better and more effectively is the people in the warehouse, right? Like they have a really good understanding. So I thought that was interesting, 'cause I think that's really the first time that I had heard someone explain it like that, where he kinda gathered a bunch of these people who on paper you'd be like, "Well, that person's gonna talk, that person's gonna talk, and these other 10 are not gonna say a word." And he would let everybody go around and give sort of their opinion on things, like everybody share. And then once we have enough information from everybody, now we can sit there and discuss what's the best option for us to pursue here. But they all have different perspectives. And I think to like for us, for Asia and I, we have a family, and we have 2 adults and 2 younger kids, but I take that idea and I go, "Okay, at some point with our family, that would be a positive thing to do." Make people feel like they have an opinion in our family, and what they want or care about is actually considered when we make decisions as a family. And so I kind of take it to that dynamic and apply it there for myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
What
think that's a
I got Go
no,
ahead,
go ahead.
Asia.
You're good. You're good.
I
I was
was
just
just gonna
gonna say,
ask
I
him
think
another
that's a
question
valid
still.
I was just gonna say, I think that's a valid point, and also too, like, so many of the things that we've talked about, whether it was, like, confrontation, giving feedback, how to, create a psychologically safe environment for people. That isn't just a business application process. Like that is life, that is your relationships, these are all skills that you can bring into your regular day to day. So for people who might be listening who are like, okay, well, this is all fine and dandy, but I don't run a business, like bring it to your workplace, bring it to, you be the person that creates that environment, bring it into your family. Like I think it applies everywhere. So yeah, I think there's like a lot of good nuggets throughout this whole episode of just like, even if it doesn't apply to business, it can apply to your regular day to day life.
Aja, yeah, again, this is one of the reasons I love these organic conversations because
Hmm.
they go in so many different directions, and it makes me think of all these different things. My wife and I will be married 25 years in November. At our fifth wedding anniversary, we went out to dinner, and I had not planned to ask her this. It just popped into my head when we were eating, and I was like, Larry, what's the best part of being married? She thought about it and she was like, "Well, you love me, you're there for me, you support me," however she answered. And like I said, I had not given this an iota of thought. And she asked the question back, "How about for you?" So I thought about it and I was like, I think it's because I can be myself with you. I don't have to be careful about what I say. I'm not walking on eggshells, and it's not like, oh, well, she may not like this or, whatever it might be. When I can be myself, that's when I'm going to be at my best.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Totally.
The not walking on eggshells piece, I think, is huge
Yeah.
within a relationship, you know, a partnership, because it allows you to, okay, even for those hard conversations, it goes, okay, well, I'm about to say something that, might not you might not like, or it might cause some sort of emotions within you. But I think that's how you get to the root of the problems, is when you have that open communication, you can actually share those things. And you have that. And part of that too is that psychologically safe space, like you said, right? Of like, I can come in, I can challenge this a little bit, I can share what I'm really thinking and feeling. And it might not go the way you want to initially. Like sometimes, even I know I'm going to speak for Erin and myself, like sometimes it's like the emotions come first, and then the like, okay, let's bring this down a couple notches. And now we can actually, like, it's not always this just like, oh, okay, yes, now we're having this controlled conversation the entire time. Like, that's not always the
That's
case.
right.
But that because you can be in that safe space with those people, you can have those emotions and also then bring it down a bit and be like, okay, we've let those through. Let's now go to like what's really going on and how do we address this? How do we work through it and all of that?
And that's being emotionally intelligent. That's emotional intelligence right there. Realizing emotions are a part of this right now, not
Mhm.
smart. Not smart. Let's take a break. Let's do whatever. And again, just quickly, when we lived with Lori's mom our entire marriage. Okay, very sadly, she got Parkinson's, and she was near the end. She was she was here at home with us. She had been in a rehab. She wanted to come home. We brought her home and said to her, Rose, we're gonna let you stay here with us. If we can't take care of you, we're gonna have to take you somewhere else. And we had
Uh-huh.
made arrangements with a nursing home. Fine. I had been in the city working, came home. I had had a very long day and I was really tired. And things were not going well with my mother in law. Lori and I were talking about it over dinner, and Lori snarled at me. And that's not like her at all. I know what you want. I know what you want. You just want to stick her in the nursing home and be done with this. And I love my mother in law. I was like, okay, clearly you're emotional. I am too. I love her. I've had a very, very long day. How about if we do this, Lori? I'm going back to the city tomorrow. You know, I always get there early. I'll call you before my class starts. Let's talk about it then, and let's table it for tonight because this is going nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. The next day I get to the city. I called her. How did you sleep? Not well. I tossed and turned. So did I. And I said to her, I was like, Lori, I'm thinking about this and I think I'm changing my mind. Maybe we don't need to put her in the nursing home. Maybe we can keep her at home. She says to me, I can't believe you're saying this because I'm changing my mind. I think we need to put her in the nursing home.
But
I
that's what
was like,
happens though
all
when you
right
can
then.
that's what
Uh,
happens when you can give yourself a moment to, like, separate the
That's
emotion
right.
for a
That's
sec, right? And go
exactly
like,
right.
what's the
Yes.
facts here? What's the best?
Right. That's right.
That's so
you get
funny, but
angry at her
it's
then, Ron, and defend your position? No, I said we were going to keep her.
No,
I said we were going to keep her.
we both laughed, and actually, as it turns out, we did have her go to the nursing home, and that was it was the right thing to do, taking the emotion out of it because we would have loved to have kept her here. It wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It just
My
wasn't.
my grandma actually had Parkinson's, and she was, I don't know, 80 something, and she had it for 10 years, and it is a heck of a thing to try to help somebody with. Like, it's just they need somebody all the time, all the time. Like, it stressed my mom like crazy because she was just constantly needing to help her mom, and I don't think there's any way she could have lived with my parents. It's just you just need like permanent help. You just do permanent help.
Yeah.
So I got one last question for you here, Ron, before we let you go.
Sure.
Um, we've talked about a lot of stuff: feedback, leadership, culture, personal development on many different levels. If you were to think of 5 books that people could read that you think are extremely valuable to people, what books would you suggest that people go and read?
7 Habits. Something called from a business perspective. I'm going to recommend two that tie into culture. One called The Advantage, which is written by Patrick Lencioni, and he gets into vision statements and priorities and things like that. I refer to this book quite a bit. It's called Beyond the Hammer. It's written by a guy named Brian Gottlieb, and it's a fable, and it's about a guy who runs a remodeling company, and it also is about culture. That's really good. From a straight leadership perspective, I like the book called Leading at a Higher Level, which is written by Ken Blanchard. And that's all about situational leadership. And it's a great book for new leaders to read, seasoned leaders to read, just excellent about when to coach, when to delegate for individuals, how to do it for teams, things along those lines. Last and not least, I'm gonna go with a book about generations because I've read this and it's something I'd like to learn more about. It's called The Best Team Wins, and it's written by a guy named oh God, his name just went right out of my head. Adrian Gostick. Adrian Gostick wrote that, and it's an excellent book because he talks all about the different generations in the workplace, what's important to them, how we need to interact with each other, and how we can support each other. So that would be my five.
Cool. So there
You
you
have
go,
some to add to
folks.
your bookshelf.
Yeah, there's a few in there I haven't read, so I'm probably gonna put those on the list. But if you are listening, there you go. You have it. You have some books that you can go and read. You also have which I highly suggest everybody listening go and does, is go check out either the DISC personality trait sort of test, or you can go and use the one that I've used, which is the one by Ray Dalio. I think it's literally called like personality test. Ray Dalio. Type it in, you'll find it, and he'll print you out like a whole PDF of. But I think for everyone, that's the first step. If you want to start thinking about and doing these things, is go and do that test and read through the whole thing front to back, whatever the results come back, and look at it and go okay, and then see where you can maybe start to improve a little bit. It'll spit you out all kinds of information that you never even thought possible. So uh, that's what you can go and do now. So, Ron, we really appreciate you taking the time with us today. Uh, Fabulous conversation. I love
Thank
talking
you,
about
guys.
these things. It's something I've been passionate about for 10 years. So, thanks for coming on and sharing with us what you've been doing for the last 20, 25 years. So I appreciate that.
Folks,
Yeah,
it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
thank
All
you.
right. We'll see you later, everyone. Bye bye.